14-year-old girl went missing in April 2024. Her body was found months later in the trunk of a Tesla registered to a famous singer, and it took 7 months after that for anyone to be arrested. 7 months. Let's get into it. Okay, so if you do not know who D4vd is, he's a 21-year-old singer, real name David Anthony Burke, who blew up online a couple of years ago, making music in his sister's closet. Lo-fi bedroom pop, romantic vibes, the kind of stuff that gets millions of streams and puts you on every teenager's playlist. He built his whole brand around being this soft, sensitive, alternative artist. Romantic Homicide was literally one of his biggest songs. Let that title sit with you for a second. And Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was 14 years old. According to her mother, she went missing in April 2024, and she had a boyfriend named David. Investigators believe the two met online through Discord, reportedly through gaming, when Celeste was around 10 years old. 10 years old. And the relationship is believed to have escalated over time until we ended up here. A missing child in a car registered to the man she trusted. This is not gossip. This is not drama. This is a real little girl who deserved to grow up, and she did not get that chance. So here is how this entire thing unfolded, because the timeline is one of the most important parts of this story. David's Tesla was found abandoned in the Hollywood Hills, just left there for days. Nobody reported it stolen. The car sat there long enough to be towed to a Hollywood impound lot on September 5th, 2025. 3 days later, on September 8th, workers at that impound lot noticed something was wrong and contacted police. When officers responded, they found Celeste inside the vehicle. She had been reported missing since April 2024. She was wearing black leggings and a tube top, a metal earring, and a bracelet in the shape of a W. She had a tattoo on her right index finger. D4vd had the exact same tattoo in the exact same place. The medical examiner's report was sealed almost immediately. The LAPD put out a press release in the days after, saying it was unclear whether there was any criminal culpability beyond the concealment of her body. Private investigator Steve Fisher, hired by the owner of the property near where the Tesla was originally found, publicly challenged that statement and said the official findings told a very different story. He argued the LAPD had significantly downplayed what was found from day one and that the public was not being given the full picture. The medical examiner's report remained sealed for months with no explanation given. Meanwhile, D4vd scrapped the rest of his tour immediately after the body was found and disappeared almost entirely from public view. His family, based in Texas, were later subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury that was convened in November 2025. His day-to-day manager, Robert Morgan Roth, was subpoenaed. His close friend and streamer, Langston, was subpoenaed. And then, in January 2026, Neo was actually arrested himself, though he was bailed out shortly after. Neo then posted on Instagram saying he was legally fine in every way and that he had all his receipts. Whatever that means, it is clear there are conversations happening behind the scenes that we are not seeing yet. Then in April 2026, D4vd was arrested. Tuesday, April 15th, Robbery Homicide Division, held without bail. Here is where it gets even more layered, because the question everyone has been asking for 7 months is not just what happened, but why it took this long. LAPD sources confirmed that D4vd made a late-night trip to a remote area of Santa Barbara at some point last spring, and investigators believe that trip is connected to Celeste's disappearance. That detail alone raises enormous questions about what was happening in the months before her body was ever found. What we also know is that Teslas are essentially rolling data centers. They log location data, movement history, and trip records. That data was pulled as part of the investigation. The car was never reported stolen, which means whoever had access to that vehicle made a series of decisions that investigators have now spent 7 months piecing together. The no bail decision is significant on its own. A judge reviewed the evidence in this case and determined that D4vd could not be released while awaiting formal charges. That is not a routine call. That is a judge looking at what law enforcement has built and deciding this man does not get the opportunity to walk out of that building. The internet has been completely lit up since the arrest broke. Reddit went wild within minutes. People have been following this case obsessively for 7 months, tracking every court document, every press release, every public statement. And the general feeling right now is somewhere between relief and anger. Relief because it finally happened. Anger because of how long it took.
We officially got video footage of David being arrested. So as all of you likely know by now, earlier today, David was arrested for the murder of Celeste Rivas, and we just got video footage of this entire situation. In the video, you could see David outside of his $1 million mansion and a bunch of police swarming around him. He was not resisting arrest in any way, shape, or form. You could kind of just see in the video, he was accepting the fact that he was caught and he is being arrested and his, entire career is over and he will likely be in jail for the rest of his life. If you want to see the full video for yourself, just search up David arrest video here on TikTok and it should be the first video that popped up. And just watching the full video was just really eerie to watch, just knowing that, a popular musician making millions of dollars, had millions of fans all around the world outside of his $1 million mansion, just, is simply being arrested for taking the life of someone, and his entire career, his entire life is basically over. How it took police so long to arrest David, honestly, I truly just have no idea, but
the most common sentiment you are seeing across every platform is that the story was clear from very early on, and yet the formal process took 7 months to reach this point. Now, to be fair, real investigations are nothing like what you see on television. Prosecutors need to be able to prove to a district attorney that a crime took place and who is responsible for it. That burden requires evidence that will hold up in court, because if the case falls apart at trial, he walks free. And building something airtight when key pieces of forensic information are still being confirmed takes time. But the frustration is completely understandable, because for 7 months, Celeste's family was waiting for answers. Her funeral was held on October 6, 2025, at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Rowland Heights, California. Her family said goodbye to her while this case was still unresolved. That is the part that stays with you. There is a question that nobody in the mainstream media seems to want to ask out loud, and that is this. At what point did the people around D4vd in a professional capacity know something was wrong, and what did they do about it? Because here is the reality of how the music industry works at that level. You do not just have a manager, you have a team, a label, publicists, booking agents, tour managers, security. These are people whose entire job is to know where their artist is, who their artist is spending time with, and what their artist is doing. That is not an invasion of privacy, that is the job. And when an artist of D4vd's profile suddenly cancels the remainder of a tour with no real public explanation, every single one of those people knows something is wrong. The question is not whether they knew something was off, the question is what they did with that knowledge. We already know his day-to-day manager was subpoenaed. That is significant. But beyond the legal process, there is a cultural question here about an industry that has a long and well-documented history of looking the other way when the person generating revenue is at the center of something uncomfortable. We have seen it before. We will unfortunately see it again. The machinery around a successful young artist is built to protect the asset, and sometimes that protection comes at the expense of the truth. Nobody in D4vd's professional circle has made a public statement. No label comment, no management statement. Nothing. And that silence, in the context of everything we now know, speaks volumes. Because when your artist gets arrested for murder and your response is complete silence, you are making a choice, and that choice deserves scrutiny. Here is something that genuinely does not get enough credit in situations like this. The internet, for all of its chaos and noise, got this one right from almost the very beginning. Within hours of the story breaking in September 2025, people online had already mapped out the key connections, identified the individuals involved, and were asking the exact questions that investigators would spend the next 7 months trying to answer formally. And throughout those 7 months, while official channels went quiet and the LAPD's public communications became increasingly vague, it was online communities that kept this story alive. That matters, because without that sustained public attention, cases like this have a way of quietly disappearing. The algorithm moves on, the news cycle moves on, and the people who need justice most are the ones who get forgotten. What the internet got wrong was the pace. People expected an arrest within weeks because the online picture felt obvious. But obvious and legally provable are two completely different things. A court does not care what Reddit thinks. A jury needs evidence that has been gathered, verified, documented, and presented in a way that meets an extraordinarily high legal standard. That process takes time, and it should, because the alternative is a system where people get convicted on public opinion rather than proof. But the instinct was right, the attention was right, and the refusal to let this story fade was right. Celeste's name stayed in circulation for 7 months because ordinary people decided it should. Not journalists, not law enforcement press offices, people online who looked at this case and said this does not add up and we are not moving on until someone answers for it. The case now goes to the district attorney's office on Monday for filing consideration. That is when formal charges get laid out. If the DA moves forward, and everything points to them doing exactly that, this goes to trial. And this is going to be one of the most significant cases we have seen in years, because it sits right at the intersection of internet culture, online safety for young people, the creator economy, and a justice system that has real questions to answer about transparency and how it communicated with the public throughout this process. D4vd built an audience making music about romance and emotion and being this misunderstood artist. Romantic Homicide was the song that made him famous. That is what people were streaming while this investigation was unfolding. Rest in peace, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. You deserve so much better than what happened to you. As for D4vd, formal charges are expected Monday. We will keep you updated on everything as this develops. If this video reached you, share it. Celeste's name deserves to stay loud. Anyway, this concludes today's video. Be sure to subscribe to LoafTube for future celebrity videos, and turn on that post notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Until then, see you in the next one.